Welcome to another episode of the Sales Story and a Tip podcast. Linda, of course, the Sales Story and a Tip podcast is part of the Sales Game Changers podcast family. So I'm very excited today. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please go up, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. If you're watching the video on YouTube, go give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you'd like. We'd be happy to see that. So again, on the Sales Story and a Tip podcast, I bring on a sales leader. I ask them to introduce themselves, and I say, tell us a great sales story. And then I say, give us a tip that you learned from that story. You could find a complete transcription also on the Sales Game Changers podcast.com website, Sales Game Changers podcast.com website. So we're talking today. We got Linda Erickson. Linda, I'm excited to hear your story. We got to know each other a little bit. And why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Fred.
Hi.
First of all, my career was in the hospitality industry and sales. And I kind of crossed several genres. I owned a travel agency in Southern California. I was then in the hotel business as a DOS in North Lake Tahoe. And when I came to Washington, D.C., I was the DOS for the Puerto Rico Convention Bureau based in Washington. And then for 15 years after that, I was vice president of sales at the convention center in D.C.
Wow. So this was the old convention center or the
The
new
new
one?
convention
Or
center.
wow, good
Yeah.
for you. So
The new.
once again, I'm based here in Northern Virginia, and
Mhm.
again, for people listening around the globe, the what's the name, the official name of the conference of
The
the convention?
Walter E. Washington Convention Center.
Yeah, I remember when that went up. It's in downtown
Yes.
DC. It's
Hmm.
an unbelievable facility, and it has everything from the automobile show to
Hmm.
conferences to conventions. And
Hmm.
I'm amazed at some of the stories that you must be able to tell us here about that, because it's such a, and the area has grown tremendously as well. I know you're not in the DC area anymore, but I go down that way, on occasion when I go into DC, and there's like, you'd be blown away. When did you leave the area, by the way?
In 22.
Okay, not
It
too long
wasn't that
ago.
long. Yeah, not too
Yeah, we're
long
doing
ago at all.
yeah, we're doing today's interview in November of 2024, and there's all these new what they call mixed use, live,
Hmm.
work, play. It's not
Hmm.
far from people listening. It's not far from Capitol Hill. It's not
Hmm.
far from Union Station, which is the big train station. It's not far from the stadium, where
Hmm.
and it's right not far from the White House and the mall and all those things too. All right, well, I'm really anxious to hear your story. So as we do on the sales story and a tip podcast, I ask our guests to tell us a sales story. So, Linda Erickson, tell us a great sales story.
Absolutely. So at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, we had many, really, it was easy to sell the destination when you think of it. Okay. 3 airports, right? This gorgeous building, as you mentioned, over 33,000 hotel rooms, over hundreds of things to do for free, 175 embassies. But I never took for granted, Fred, what it was like to bring a piece of citywide business in. It was a competitive in the marketplace, extremely so. So here was my challenge. I said, okay, how do I rise above the competition? What do I do? So this was my test. We were bidding on a piece of corporate business technology from the Silicon Valley. And trust me, everyone wanted this piece of business. Okay. So my objective was, how am I going to distinguish the convention center, our feature offerings, as well as our staff? What was going to make the difference? So I created what I called the Superlative Site Tour. Okay. So Fred, are you ready to go on tour with me? Okay. So the clients come in this day and they walk into the grand lobby, and I had the convention bureau and my key staff there, but also had my CEO there. Because I thought, okay, I want to make an impression. If the big man's here, introduction, a warm welcome, and they were like, oh, wow. But then as they looked up in the foyer of the convention center, we had a very sophisticated digital signage program. At the time, the only ones in the United States in convention centers. And they're on 4 flags coming down, 2 on each side, said welcome, their logo, their mission statement for the company, as well as the name of their conference for that year. And they were aghast and they were blown away. So I always say, I have this line I call it power opening. That was my power opening, bringing the CEO and razzle and dazzle them with that.
That's amazing. So I have some clarifying questions, but I want to ask you, what are
Yes.
some of the tips that you took away from that sales story?
Oh, you want my big tip?
Yeah, of course.
My big tip from the end now that I was going to give at the end? Oh, I've got a whole story for you here.
Oh, well, tell me more of the
Oh,
story
there's
then.
more.
Oh,
So
keep
we're
going.
going down to the first exhibit hall. Exhibit halls A, B, and C. And I had them overlooking into the exhibit hall and said, just imagine this. In 2008, we served 16,236 people at a sit down dinner. And we had to do it in 3 locations, but this was the largest. And we built a makeshift kitchen there also. We won the Guinness World Book of Records for the largest sit down dinner served at any convention center around the world. My message to them was look at who we are, what we can do, collaboration, teamwork, talent to pull that off. And it was a masterful objective. We continued on down to the base of the stairs. There's our VP of facilities to welcome us. Took us behind the scenes for a bit, showed us the loading docks, all what it takes to get a show in. Because on a P&L statement, Fred, for a meeting planner, that's usually the most expensive. We had great labor relations, made a difference. Off we went. There's more. We stopped at the NOC, which is called the Network Operating Center. And there to greet us was our general manager for technology. It's a technology company. Can we deliver? And so we wanted to make sure we could. So he had done his homework brilliantly. And not only could we meet, but exceed all of the requirements that they needed. Continued on. Another escalator up. This time we're at another exhibit hall D&E. Outside of that hall, too, was this huge digital sign. Or that was a great opportunity for sponsorships. So again, my message to them, subliminal, they're going, click, click, ching, ching, money. They could sell that. And it rotated as many times as needed. So it was a multiple revenue stream for them. Hall's D&E, walk in. I'm on cement floors and columns. Boring, right? All of a sudden, I said, in this room, every presidential inauguration has been held since the building opened in 2003. And so just think of this day when Obama had his first inauguration. Here's Beyonce singing Etta James' song, At Last. Okay, then I shifted to, in that same space, we hosted 2 nuclear security summits with 54 world leaders present. And the show decorator literally reenacted the United Nations, what it looked like in New York. I then introduced them to our Vice President of Public Safety. Because especially in today's world, safety is everything. I don't care if it's an inauguration or nuclear security summit. Are they safe? And with our expertise in these huge global profile events, we definitely made a difference there. Our last stop, up to the ballroom, which I would call the grand dame of the building. So as we opened the doors, Fred, there was our audiovisual team had set a mock stage of what it would look like to have had their general session. Lights and sounds and music. And they were like, again, ooh, taken aback. So we wrapped it up right across the hall in the foyer with a champagne toast. We had hors d'oeuvres so they could taste the food using that sense. And then our general manager and COO was there to give them another farewell welcome and farewell on our capabilities and any questions. Okay, moral of the story, moral of the Superlative Site Tour. We closed the deal. 3-year contract, though, for 3 years. That's the Superlative Site Tour.
That is amazing. So again, I'm getting chills here because I've been in that building.
Yes, thank
So
you.
I have a couple of clarifying questions. So for our listeners here, give us just a general ballpark on what a conference like that would, the gross revenues from something, just ballpark what it would be. We're
Sure.
talking five, six, seven, eight figures, just so that people understand
Are
the
you talking
scope.
to the building or with the cost of the planner?
Yeah, to both, to help us understand how big of a deal this is.
It's a huge
Why
deal.
yeah,
First of all, it's a huge deal.
yeah,
The revenue for us, net revenue was in the million, right? Six figures, definitely. And to that planner, of course, I'm not privy to their final stats, so to speak. But an annual citywide convention for any association or corporation is usually their major revenue generator for the year. So we're probably talking multi-millions in that case.
couple other things. So you talked about competition. So,
Hmm.
you know, I've had some of the people from Destination DC
Yes.
on the sales game. I know we talked about them, Elliot and Melinda
And
Riley.
yes.
Over the years, they have been on the Sales Game Changers podcast, and their mission is to bring conferences to DC.
Hmm.
So they're competing with Boston, New York, uh, even smaller cities like Baltimore and Atlanta, Dallas, and international companies
Hmm.
coming. So there's competing with New York and all those things. So talk for a second or two. You mentioned competition. Um, is your competition other sites within DC, or is it similar where you're also competing with New York and Boston? Give us a little bit of an insight
Sure.
when you say competition. What does that mean?
Absolutely. So first of all, we're close, worked with the Bureau hand in hand, Destination DC. They couldn't do it without us. It was Destination DC, the convention center, and the hotel community. So collectively, we would come together. The convention bureau takes the lead on a piece of business. So there's certain buildings that are more right in the competitive set. Like for example, Philly is almost exactly the same as us. San Diego, very similar to us. But Orlando, Chicago, and Las Vegas are much bigger than us. So some shows we could not take, they could only go into that world realm. There was also a huge push internationally that the Destination DC that we co-created together. And in that case, the international conferences aren't usually as large. Some of them are as DC. I mean, as the regular ones. So we kind of opened up a whole new world of business from that particular place. But I
Yeah,
would say and Boston was similar to us too from building size. So sometimes you have to look at that. You can always go a
yeah.
little bit smaller, but not a little bit larger.
I want to ask you one more question. So one of the key words, and we're talking with Linda Erickson today, one of the key words that we talk about on the Sales Game Changers podcast and at the Institute for Excellence in Sales is preparation,
Hmm.
right? So, you know, you just didn't wing this and send an email to everybody the night before. Hey, these guys are coming into town. Bill,
Yes,
I need you over here. Are you going to be, you know, talk about some of the preparation that went into this entire process,
sure.
you know, that you know, did you spend months kind of processing this and tons of meetings, and was everybody on board? Because, you know, it just seems like such a brilliant execution.
Yes,
uh but it's not just like, hey, we're gonna, like, these guys are
yeah,
coming in, be your best. You know, you had people strategically placed, and you had
completely.
things. Yeah, so talk about the preparation a little
I
bit.
did. That had just had never been done before. That's why I turned it superlative. I'm just talking about the building right
Mhm.
now. First of all, for the whole
Yeah.
destination, it's a huge thing. We work with the convention bureau on a lot to as far as the people coming in, and then of course the hotel community. They're because they lead that site tour around the city.
Mm,
But from the building's perspective, I wanted us to shine differently because a lot of times it's just like the salespeople on a site tour. But we're not the experts really when it gets to the technology. We're not the experts on that show floor. We're not the experts in audiovisual. So bring the people to them that can actually deliver those goods. Plus, it's creative. It's not that same talking head the whole time,
yeah.
right? So I was about delivering an experience for them. If you notice in just what I was sharing with you on the tour, wow them with this signage of them, right? Have them taste the food. That I always try and use as many of the senses that I could, five senses to do it. So it took internally, yeah, it took a lot to, first of all, concept bring it together. I did that with my team. And then, of course, I went out to every department. They were more than willing because they know the heart and soul. of our revenue is convention centers. So they
That's
were more than
yeah.
willing to do it. And then I would coach them, and this is what I want you to say. Let's
Yes.
kind of get this. And I am a firm believer in these three words called practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
And what I find in the sales environment, people don't do it. They get up and
Oh,
they wing it.
absolutely.
They
Yeah.
wing it. And I think I guess they said it's like have the PowerPoint do the talking, correct? Kind of does it for you, and it'll kill you every time. Kill you
Wow,
every
this is a
time.
great story, Linda. Thank you so much. So, do you have any further advice that came from this that you want to share?
I have a tip.
Good.
Okay. So, oh, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Okay. So my tip is deliver an unforgettable message and experience in all of your sales presentations, no matter how big or how small. Deliver that unforgettable message and experience in your sales presentations.
Just curious, how many dry runs did you do? I'm sure you did a dry run or two. How many dry runs did you do?
But for today,
No, for the when you did the tour of this tech for the technology company.
yes, we probably did five.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I love the concept. I mean, a lot of times we take things for granted. We
Mm-hmm.
have a customer, we're just going to renew. We think we're their
Mm-hmm.
choice, right? So a lot of people do mail it in, even though they're quote unquote committed. And this was such a savory story on thinking it through, appealing to them, understanding what their drivers were,
Mm-hmm.
bringing in partners, training your people. A lot of times in
Mm-hmm.
sales, at the Institute for Excellence in Sales, most of the sales that we talk about, they're complex, they're B2B or
Right.
B2G. There's multiple people, there's timing, there's the customer. We actually did a show recently on the customer's buying journey, right?
Yes,
Where are they? And for your customer too, you had to know when are they making the decision, excuse
of
me, when are
course.
they making the decision? What's going into that? All right, Linda Erickson, I want to thank you so much. This has been a great story. And again, I'm
Thanks.
visualizing the building
Yes.
and a huge deal. And it's just great insights. I usually don't ask, is there anything else you want to say? Because it was such a fascinating story.
I do. I really want to emphasize, Fred, the power of using stories into your deliveries. That delivery is only everything, and that to really put those in that. If I just said, oh, it's 473,000 square feet, so giving all that down, they aren't going to remember it, but
Yes.
they're going to remember a Guinness World Book of Records. They're going to
Yes.
remember the inaugurations. Those are the things that you leave people with, and you can always give them the information after. So data and information is good to a point, but it can also kill you.
We talk about storytelling a lot on the Sales Game Changers podcast. And you're right. It's like they would say, well, what's your square footage? Well, it's 7,000. And
Hmm.
if we give you D and E,
Yeah,
that's another 15,000. And okay, well, how many light bulbs do you have in the building? Well, we
right.
have 32,000. Oh, okay. And but you're right. This
Yeah, who
is where,
cares?
and I remember President and Mrs. Obama dancing to
Yes. See?
Beyonce on
Right.
TV and Beyonce
Completely.
and
That's where
I
it happened.
and visualizing 16,000 people, you know,
Right.
eating a meal. And
Completely.
wow, that's a great example of how to tell those
Yeah.
stories.